Hi guys! What you're about to see was shot about a month and a half ago. Stay tuned for the very end for an update. Hi guys! Welcome back aboard good old Athena here in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. We've gotten wind of a potentially very interesting boat refit project up in Florida. It is a hurricane damaged boat, it is an unfinished project, and it's been up on the hard for a while. The combination of all those words might sound a little bit scary, but this could represent our opportunity to get into a boat that we would otherwise never be able to afford. This is an Antares 44, a catamaran. If you're new here, we're Ava and Mess. I spent 7 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Trident Warrior sailboat named Athena. It was an oh glorious sanding extravaganza. We left Denmark and started cruising full-time, sailing down Europe's west coast, and then we had our biggest adventure yet, crossing the Atlantic. Now we're sanding and sailing our way around the world. I haven't seen the boat in real life yet, so I don't know, but I feel like this could be such a good opportunity that I've booked a flight from the BVI's to Florida just to go check it out. Let's get underway. The airport on Beef Island is only a 2-minute walk from the dinghy dock. It's not the biggest airport in terms of size, but what they lack in size they make up for with blazing fast free Wi-Fi, where I could attend the last of my ABYC classes right under this giant spinning decapitator 2000. You know it's a Caribbean airport when there are chickens roaming around with unhindered access to the runway. Speaking of big almost flightless birds, here is my very pink ride out of the BVI's. For reasons unknown, I again chose to sit right next to a spinning decapitator, this time with slightly higher RPM. I waved goodbye to the beautiful blue water and started the journey north. It is funny how much faster it is to fly somewhere compared to sailing somewhere. That flight was 6 hours, and that includes a 2-hour layover in Puerto Rico. When we go to sail the exact same route in the next couple of weeks, if we sailed non-stop, it would take us a little over a week. Well, we're probably going to stop and smell the roses a little bit, so we're looking more like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm parked outside of the mystery yard where the boat is located, but I'm not going to share the name of the yard because I'm not sure the current owner of the boat is super interested in having a bunch of people show up. But speaking of the current owner, his name is Bryan, and if you watch YouTube videos, you might be familiar with his channel. It's called Sailing Bryan, where he features, well, the refit of this very boat we're about to look at. I'll include a link for his channel down in the description. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of what has happened to this boat so far. Bryan bought the catamaran in the Bahamas after it was partially sunk by Hurricane Dorian in 2019. Most of the damage was sustained when another catamaran apparently landed on top of the Antares, opening up a big giant hole in the starboard side and crushing part of the cabin top. COVID came along and complicated and delayed the project a bit, but after patching up some of the damage, Bryan was able to get the boat towed to Florida, where he then started working on it. So far, from what I've seen on YouTube, Bryan has fixed the damage to the cabin top and repaired the big gaping hole in the side of the hull. He's also completely rebuilt both of the engines, just to name a few projects. This is a giant boat project, and sometimes life takes unexpected twists and turns, and I think that's exactly what happened to Bryan and why he isn't able to finish this boat. But on a positive note, I believe today actually he's about to close on a different catamaran, a catamaran that's already in the water and ready to go cruising. So yeah, if you want to hear more about Bryan's story, like I said, there's a link for his channel down in the description. I brought along a couple of tools in my backpack. First off, I used my thermal camera to look for any temperature fluctuations that could indicate water saturation. I noticed something on both of the keels. Then I busted out my old trusty moisture meter. This thing was pretty pricey, but it's been a huge help to me and a few other people I've met over the years. The moisture meter doesn't just read surface moisture, but measures moisture at depth, with one little asterisk, and that is that a high reading on the moisture meter doesn't necessarily mean anything. A meter can easily be fooled by, for instance, metal or a hose. All it does is tell you there's something you should potentially take a look at. Before heading up on deck, I tapped the entire hull, listening for any difference in sound. A difference in sound doesn't necessarily mean that there's an issue, it could just be an area of solid laminate, like for instance here under the waterline. Up on the deck, I meticulously measured every little bit of the deck, making sure to pay extra attention to anywhere with visible damage, like for instance the crack you see here. The moisture was very localized and it should be an easy fix. The biggest moisture issue I found on the deck was this port side eyebrow, for a lack of a better word. This is not a structural part of the boat, but around 1/3 of it is showing elevated moisture levels. I found a lot of flexing on the cabin top, but Bryan told me later on that there's some bracing missing from the inside of the boat. This would certainly explain the flexing, and it's not something I'm concerned about. I also found some flexing on the starboard side in front of the cabin tub. This is in no way a deal breaker, but there might be some damage here that needs tending to. The reason why I'm checking if there is any moisture in the hull or the deck is because this is a cored construction, and even though this is a foam core, meaning it's less susceptible to water damage compared to something like balsa, it is still susceptible to water damage. At least that is the case for what I've read for PVC foam core, which is a very common foam core material. Now the Antares are not apparently built with PVC foam. I think they're built with a different type of foam. I believe it's called SNA foam, which is supposed to be better than PVC foam, but I don't know if it's also susceptible to water damage. I figured I would do the moisture checks first and then see if it was actually gonna be an issue before I started digging into the virtues of SNA foam or whatever it's called. But yeah, so far I don't think there are any big issues with the hulls. Let's head up inside of the boat and see what we can see in there and see if we can figure out why the moisture readings were high on the keels. Coming up the ladder, we can see some of the areas that Bryan have repaired and also some of the areas that still need to be repaired. But yeah, this is the cockpit, if that's what it's called on a catamaran. I'm not really an expert. But yeah, if we move inside, it is a little bit messy in here. It's gonna make it a little bit difficult for us to get into all the corners, but let's take a look. On a very positive note, I've got tons of headroom in here. I'm 6'2", and yeah, this would be luxurious. Moving into the starboard hull, oh, we can see into the keel, and yeah, there's a bunch of standing water down there, so that's probably why we got those high moisture readings. If we look aft, that is the master cabin in there, and then if we look forward, then there is a head and a shower. I am curious as to where that water is coming from, but that's probably not a big issue. But one thing I wanted to make absolutely sure I checked out while I was here was some of the repairs Bryan did to this big giant gaping hole in the hull over here. Don't worry about the fact that you can see light shining through. That is not a bad thing. But yeah, looking at the repair from down here, I would say Bryan did a pretty good job with that repair. I know Bryan got the laminating scheme from Antares and followed that here. So yeah, I don't see anything here that indicates that this isn't a good repair. He also replaced a section of foam over there, but yeah, from here, that also looks like a good repair. One of the things I really appreciate about the Antares is the fact that they don't really use a lot of modules or liners, stuff like that. The only place I can see right here is the forward head there, where you can see that you can't see the hull and stuff. But the nice thing about not using liners or modules is the fact that you can actually see the hull. You can see where bulkheads are tabbed to the hull. You can kind of inspect everything. I say that, but then here, for instance, the bulkhead that's here is obscured by what I'm assuming is a fuel tank. Let's move from the starboard hull over there to the whatever this is called on a catamaran, and into the port hull. The Antares has what's known as a galley down, meaning the galley is in one of the hulls, which I think is a great idea. But I know from watching Bryan's videos that this hull was not underwater, only the starboard one. The woodworking over on this side certainly looks in a lot better shape than over there, but there are still some little signs of moisture. I think we would have to re-veneer or repaint, or well, something would have to happen. The keel that's over here is still sealed. I got high moisture readings off it, so
Either there's moisture in the laminate down there or there is a leak into that keel. But yeah, no matter which one of those, it's not a big deal. Before I forget, I should mention that yes, the hulls are of cord construction, but only above the waterline. Below, like for instance the keels, are solid glass. So down there, not so worried about high moisture readings. Aft of the galley is the port aft cabin, and yeah, that looks like a very nice cabin. This is that same bulkhead that was obscured by the what I'm assuming is a fuel tank over on the other side, and as you can see, tabbing looks awesome here, no signs of any issues. Moving forward, we get into this cabin here where there is a raised bunk of sorts, and then forward of that there is a head. In the newer versions of this boat, there's a separate shower in there, but in this version it's a wet head. I have a sneaking suspicion that Ava would prefer for that not to be a wet head, meaning having a separate shower. But if you do put in the separate shower, well then you lose out on the cockpit, or not cockpit, but the locker that's forward of the head. If I was to point out something I don't really like about the interiors, it's the fact that they use a lot of this foam-backed vinyl stuff here to cover surfaces. You can see all the white stuff in here in the aft cabin here, that's foam-backed vinyl. All this area here along these big windows here and the headliner in here, all of that used to be foam-backed vinyl. And of course the same goes over here in the starboard hull, where you can even see little remnants of it around some of the port lights. The reason I don't really like foam-backed vinyl is because, well, it's just a matter of time before it starts sagging. If you get a tear in it, then it's hard to repair. If you get some kind of stain on it, you can't really touch it up. It's just not my favorite choice. I'd much rather have a faired and painted surface, but of course that is a lot more work. You might have noticed this mast precariously perched on the deck of this boat and the one next to it. That is the mast for this catamaran, but as you can see, it's pretty short. It's kind of got a bit chopped off, and it's also very bent. So that mast is a complete loss. If we take a peek here in this compartment, we can see another one of the things that are really cool about the Antares. Or, I don't know if you can actually see them there on the camera, but they've got rack and pinion steering, which is really cool. The rudder over on the port side is still hooked up. I did notice I couldn't turn this one, but I could turn the other one when I was below the boat. So yeah, that kind of explains it. What is nice to see in here is the fact that there are no signs of any delamination or any other issues. It's just covered in a little bit of oh glorious man glitter. I think I've seen what I can see considering the messiness inside of the boat. I don't want to move around any stuff. It's not my boat. But yeah, I've buttoned the boat back up. Let's head down. I'm not particularly team catamaran or team monohull. I could be perfectly happy about either one of those, and I can see pros and cons to each of them. But Ava, on the other hand, is very much team catamaran. So yeah, I believe the saying is happy wife, happy life. What would be awesome about having a catamaran is the fact that it comes with its own little shaded area where you can work on stuff underneath the boat. That is pretty sweet. Before I forget, this is the hardtop that comes with this catamaran, but it does have a lot of damage. I would be tempted to build a new one to make it slightly bigger and be able to squeeze in a little bit more solar, more shade. But yeah, this is the standard model. But is this the catamaran for us? That is a really good question. There are some pros to this particular project. For one, Bryan has rebuilt both of the engines, and the engines were only a year old when the catamaran hit, so I think there's some value there. He also already has bought and paid for a new tow rail. Tow rail is pretty expensive, so that's there. That's kind of good. He mentioned that there's also a bunch of foam and some plywood that's gonna come with the boat. That's nice. I don't think there's anything on this boat that I can't fix, but there is a lot of work to be done here. I think the next step is for Ava and I to sit down and figure out what we're willing to offer for this project. Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one, but we'll see what happens.
I'm back at the hotel, and I wasn't planning on filming any of this stuff. I was just gonna magically be back on the boat. but there's been an important development. I really like Panda Express. It's a bit of an addiction. Specifically the orange chicken. So yeah, I ordered some of that, and of course that comes with a little fortune cookie. And when I opened this fortune cookie, it said, "You are exactly where you're supposed to be." If that's not a sign, then I don't know what is, but yeah, we'll certainly have to take the recommendation of the almighty Panda into consideration. And as if by magic, I am back aboard Athena. I've shown Ava a bunch of photos and a bunch of video, and we both agree this is potentially an amazing opportunity for us. Yes, this is a massive project, and it is gonna take a ton of work to get that boat back on the water. Also, it is gonna take a ton of money, but I do have a lot of experience with this type of work, and like I said, I don't think there's anything on that boat I can't fix. I am fully aware that we're gonna get a bunch of comments saying that don't buy this boat, run away, it's the worst mistake ever, and so on and so on. But I don't think it is. I think if we're willing to put in the work, which is a lot of work, as previously mentioned, and the money, then this could represent a great deal for us. Not only that, but also being relatively new to catamarans, I've been digging around a little bit, and from what I've seen, the PDQs or the Antares are, well, at the top of my list, and I base that on how they're built. In terms of livability, I think I could basically be happy aboard any boat, no matter the number of hulls or arrangements. But for how they're built, I think the PDQs or the Antares are really, really nice. In any kind of deal, I always prefer if everybody can walk away happy. But with a project like this, it is going to be hard to put a value on it, because Bryan does have a lot of time and also money in this project already. But with an unfinished project like this, you're never going to get all of that money back. So yeah, figuring out what we're going to be offering is going to be maybe a little bit hard. So long story short, we're gonna make Bryan an offer, but we just don't exactly know the value of that offer yet. But yeah, are you excited?
I am excited. I'll definitely say I did not think we would end up with a catamaran. I mean,
No.
of course, you have always liked catamarans, and I know like you have done your due diligence and spent lots of time previous to finding this boat, and we both came to the conclusion that catamarans just weren't in our price range.
Yes, I think that was, so that you can have many arguments for or against catamarans, but the overruling argument for us was just cost. Like, catamarans are horrendously overpriced, and yeah, there's just no way we could afford it except for something like this project.
Yeah, so I think it is very exciting. It's nerve-wracking. I know Mast said that we have a lot of work to do, and I think we are both very much aware of how much work is gonna need to be done. And I'm excited because I didn't really get to be a part of the most of Athena's refit, so I'm gonna be in there.
Yeah,
Getting the work done.
We'll get a sanding soon enough.
Yeah.
So we're gonna reach out to Bryan and put in an offer.
Yeah, we'll keep you guys posted, but you probably won't hear it in the next video. It's probably going to take some time.
Yeah, there's paperwork and negotiation and back and forth, and I fully expect this to take weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah, so don't expect to hear anything soon, but we'll look into it.
And we will let you know as soon as we know.
Yes. And yeah, so all we can say is just please cross your fingers for us.
Before we ended this video, we just wanted to give you guys a quick update about what's going on with the boat, because it has been about a month and a half from the footage that you guys just seen.
Yes, we were really hoping that by the end of this video we could have a big reveal and say that the project boat is now ours, but it's not yet. We have agreed on a price with Bryan. The only thing holding us up is a bit of paperwork. There's a bit of an issue with the registration on the boat, and for the last month or so we've been trying to clear it out, but it's dragging out a little bit.
Yeah, but I definitely think we're on the right track, but it could just easily take about another month or two. But the good news is that we are in Florida now, and we actually did arrange with Bryan that we can start cleaning up the boat next week.
Yeah, so if the deal doesn't pan out, we'll have wasted a couple of days tidying up the boat.
that's not so bad. The big upside for us is tidying out the boat. We'll get to get into all the little nooks and crannies I couldn't see the first time I went to see the boat. And that should give us a better idea of what we're getting into here. So we hope to see all of you guys next week here. Well, not back aboard Athena, but back aboard the catamaran for a bit of tidying up and yeah, digging deeper into that project.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to go through all the stuff.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is going to be the end of this week's video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video,
Please remember to leave a like.
see you!